I've had such a wide variety of clientele with different perspectives, different views on life, different opinions and things like that, whether it's different amongst themselves or different to me. It's made me realize that you can't really have judgment on people with their opinions or with their thoughts or whatever it is, because everyone has had a certain upbringing that's formed that opinion or formed that thought. And you sort of realize that if you had had the same upbringing, you would also have the exact same thoughts.
Hey guys, welcome to the Chillcast episode 2. My name's Kavien. Thank you so much for tuning in. Obviously, this is the second episode. Thank you so much to everyone who liked, subscribed, messaged me, and reached out. I'm really grateful that we sort of touched on gratitude in the first episode, because I think that's what it's come to. I'm so grateful for everyone that sort of reached out to me, reached out to my cousin, and he's back again. So we couldn't be happier with how the first one went, and people actually took a lot out of it. So really happy. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. A lot of the people who've actually watched haven't subscribed. That's fine if you don't want to, but go for it. Which leads me to my first guest. I've actually bring in Minhaz Chowdury today. So he's actually a really, really awesome person. So I think you'll get to see that throughout sort of this session. So a little bit about him. He's obviously someone who came out of uni and then sort of went and started doing his own work. Working for, physios and everything like that. And then he actually, then decided that wasn't what was best for him. And he's actually running his own, physio/gym at the moment called Pump and Click. So it's actually really, really awesome. And I'm actually extremely excited because I think he has a lot of insights on different things, especially like high level athletics and, even mindset, right? So that's, I think, some of the stuff that we'll probably cover. Mm-hmm. So how are you going?
Yeah, I'm good, man. How are you?
Good?
Yeah.
Good, thanks. And again, we do have Shanaka here. He's appearing again. You know him already from the first one. So I think we might dive a little bit deeper into some of the things we touched on the first episode. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. So, tell me a little bit about what you're doing recently. How are you going?
It's good. So like you said, I've started my own business called Pump and Click Physiotherapy and Consulting. I guess the context behind it is I came out of uni as a physiotherapist, worked in a clinic for 3 years, which was really good for my experience and my knowledge. Where I was, we got a lot of chronic pain sort of patients, and chronic pain is a really sort of complex topic where the pain that the patients experience is not just physical, so a lot of it is mental. And over time, I just realized more and more there was a pattern building with all the chronic pain patients where their mindset, their beliefs, and where they were mentally really played a part on them physically. So a lot of the times what we would try to do with a lot of the patients and the clients was try to reverse engineer it, whether it was trying to take better care of their health, mental health to look after their physical health, or vice versa. And so I did that for a very long time. After 3 years or so, I think I felt I sort of learned most of what I came to learn at the clinic. I was ready to move a bit closer to home as well. And so I started my own business where I was just renting a space out of a gym. And when I first started, it was very kind of stock standard, just seeing people who had an injury, treating those injuries and whatnot. But I felt like there was a lot more that we could do in that space in regards to building more physically robust, strong athletes and people, which then sort of has a two-pronged effect where they physically get better, but mentally get better as well. Yeah,
and I think the reason I find what you sort of do really interesting is that mental aspect of it, right? A lot of people can sort of help physically, get better at that, right? But when you actually focus on the mindset of that person, that actually it's like a times 10 growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I'm not a trained psychologist or counselor or anything like that. So I never really try to tell people how to think or how they should behave or anything. But like I said, what I've seen from my experience is the physical and mental are very parallel in the way they function. So my job is to improve their physical health. And I'm hoping as a byproduct, the mental health sort of piggybacks off that.
It's its own little niche there as well, which I think is probably a testament to how you studied physio and took different things out of it than most people who go the conventional approach do.
Yeah.
So you carved out your own niche in how you deliver that approach.
Yeah,
right?
I think the way I sort of saw it was, and this is how I sort of see a lot of problems, are almost like a domino effect. And I feel like every problem has one big domino that you need to just push over and everything starts to fall into line. And for me, so much of it came from physical strength. That looked after a lot of their injuries from a physical perspective. But being able to display physical strength also translate into mental strength and mental robustness, which sort of helps them in every other aspect of their life.
That's awesome. I think like one of the interesting parts for me, obviously, I haven't known you for the longest time. So Shanaka's obviously known him since high school, for context. Went to MHS together, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so they've known each other for a bit longer, but I've sort of, met Minnie a little bit after. But I think what was interesting for me was like, I saw the sort of, when you were taking those big leaps of, starting to do it by yourself, right? I remember we were sort of going to go get the first weights to do
that's
stuff
right.
at home, right? Which was like really interesting. And I can sort of tell that it was a big thing for you. So, how was that transition from, getting like that full-time pay and, that secure salary and making that big step and leap into, going for yourself, doing it yourself?
It was definitely scary, but I think the whole time I sort of felt like this is something that I have to do. So it was never a question of whether I could do it or not. I always believed that I could do it, and it was something that I just placed the responsibility on myself. I was like, you have to do this. This is the only way you believe physio or strength and conditioning should be done. So take whatever necessary action you need to. So that's when I quit my job, found a place in Maribyrnong, started with no clients. It was just cold calling. I was getting a lot of help from a business perspective from Shanaka and my friend Luindu. And slowly small little things started to snowball, and moved to another gym about a year later. And then, as you said, COVID hit, and you did help me a lot as well in setting up my home gym. Again, never saw that as an obstacle or a barrier or anything like that. I got everything that I needed. But I guess because I had that vision of what I believed physiotherapy and strength and conditioning should be, I think despite those obstacles and limitations, I sort of still knew where I wanted to go, and just sort of kept going forward.
Yeah.
Talk us through because I think two things I've always seen in you is like a real deep sense of belief tied to a strong vision, right? And I reckon those are two things people struggle a lot with.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned belief, because I think from my clientele base and what people see of them, you see a lot of like incredible individuals lifting heavy weights. And I think a lot of the credit is sort of misplaced and given to me. I don't think I deserve that sort of credit. I think all I've done is just sort of given them an environment where they feel they can be their most confident. And it really is them sort of taking that extra step further. I think Shannon's can also agree, like a lot of the times we're sort of blessed with having very high performing clients who go on and actually start to inspire us more than we inspire them. But yeah, initially I think you need to show a little bit of belief in them, and everyone who walks through these doors, they've got my belief that they can get their absolute most. Once they have that though, that everything's coming from them.
I think it's... So I think it's a bit of both way, right? Like I think obviously you're saying that, it's mainly them, they've got that potential, but for you to unlock that potential, I think it's a bit of both ways. And it's got something I was going to touch on as well, like the weights that people you're training aren't doing, like chokes, like they don't choke, right? It's like 200 kilo deadlifts constantly, right? And it's sort of, that's why I'm like so intrigued by how you sort of train your clients, because it's not that it's like lucky that they get there, like they do it once, right?
Yeah.
You build them up, you make it like almost a science for them to get to those weights. So, how do you find breaking that down, and like, is there anything special that you do when you first meet the client, or what? How does that go?
Again, I think right now the stage that Pump and Click is at, I think the clients that do come in on the basis of what they see of other people, and I think that's something really, really strong in tapping into your own potential. When you see your own peers doing it, you see people you know doing it. I think that actually plays probably the biggest part.
Yeah.
If they had not seen other people doing the weights that they do or the exercise they do, they'd probably have that limiting belief on themselves. So in a way, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy here, where they see someone else do it, they have the belief that I can do it, Therefore, if I can do it, the next person can do it. And again, it's almost just like cascaded, where I truly do feel like I've just taken a step back, and everything's just snowballing on its own volition.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like just a general culture that's inbuilt, where when you come in, you leave your doubts behind.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I think that's one thing we always say. When you come into this gym, you can be whoever you want to be. Whoever that person is for you to achieve the most. So you'll see a whole bunch of different routines when people are going up to their max deadlift. Some people want to have a joke, have a bit of fun. Others are very serious. Others get really angry and aggressive, and whatever it is that helps you tap into your potential. I think they feel comfortable doing that. And I think that's just my job, is to create that environment where they feel comfortable in themselves.
That's it.
Yeah. And I think even like Mini does train me as well. Like he's doing a new online program where he's sort of training me. I think that's what I've sort of seen as well. Like I've pushed past a lot of my PBs just because like it doesn't seem like it's a heavy weight. Like when I lift it, in my mind it's not a heavy weight. Even though if I take a step back and look at it, like a year ago I would have been like, holy shit, I can't lift this. You know what I mean? So it's that's awesome. Something I find interesting as well. So yeah, you had a couple of questions as well, didn't you?
No, I think one of the things I took from that is like, I think a coach or a mentor's greatest ability is to provide a level of belief that the student or client doesn't necessarily have in themselves yet, right? And it's like sometimes that's the only thing that makes a difference. Like I look back at my own life and I think there were moments in my life where I saw someone else believed in me more than I believed in myself. And that just helped me bridge the inches that were there, right? So I think just you being able to facilitate that is what's probably creating the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think along that sort of theory, it's almost like the first client success story that you have was probably the hardest one.
Yeah.
And you always think back to that person, and I know who it is in my head, who I gave him the instructions, gave him the programs to follow and things like that.
Yeah.
He did them to a T, achieved amazing results. And the moment he achieved that result, that's when the floodgates started to open. And so again, I come back to saying it honestly doesn't feel like I'm doing anything for these clients. That it almost feels like they're just doing it on their own. And if I can facilitate in some way, that's what I'm trying to do.
You're just creating the structure that holds it together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, 100%. And around sort of like, I guess some of those clients, even myself, right? There are times when we sort of get a little bit lazy, a little bit less motivated, right? So, what's your advice for sort of people that want to go to the gym, right? There's all those people that sign up for a gym, actually don't even pay for it the whole year. What's your sort of advice for that? What do you think is a mindset issue? How do you fix that?
Well, yeah, I guess the way I've sort of structured my program, I've tried to eliminate motivation being a key as to them going to the gym. I think understanding why you need to go to the gym or why you want to go to the gym is really important. And often tying that to something that's quite deep and heavy is really important. Because if you see gym as just gym or like any other sort of hobby, you're never really going to maximize the potential from it. So you do need to tie something a little bit deeper, a little bit heavier to your obligations and your responsibilities. Again, coming back to how I've sort of structured my business model, what I realized, like I said, a big domino effect, I realized most people need to build on their strength and they need to do that for a period of time. So if you're working with me, then you sort of buy a program or buy a package or whatever it might be that allows you to experience that strength training for a period of time. And I think just from that alone, once people start seeing results as well, that helps the motivation. And whilst it's important for people to be able to drive themselves, I think we have untapped potential in having friends, having peers, colleagues around us, because I think that also helps with that accountability. And whilst it's important that you can do things on your own, sometimes I find it does help just as a bit of a Kickstarter to have someone there that can keep you accountable till you get into the rhythm and understand why you're doing things, till you also start achieving some results. And then from there, it sort of does flow on.
100%. I think that's not like, I think that's not just a gym, right? I think that actually applies to everything. Like even for the podcast, I have like, a set group of like people that are around me to sort of stabilize that, make me go forward with it, even if there's days where I don't want to record it, I don't want to do that. But it does push you sometimes, right?
Yeah. I think we're always stronger as a group than we are individually. And if it's there, if that resource is there, I think it's quite silly not to use it.
Exactly.
I think we often hear motivational speakers and things like that saying things should be done on your own, like no one else is going to get you out of bed, etc., etc. Whilst I agree with that, I think if I want help tomorrow and Kavie's there to help me, why wouldn't I use that to kickstart what I want to do?
Exactly. It's not
It's really important. But I was going to say, it's like, I think so many people think that they've got to do it alone. And I think more and more you start to realize, why would you?
Yeah.
Like there's no shame in working with people.
Yeah.
And people want help.
Yeah. And it's awesome if you can do it alone, and you can probably get to a stage where you do start doing things alone.
Yeah.
But like I said, just in relation to your question, just to get started or just to get back on the horse, use your friends, use whatever resource you have.
Yeah, because they, at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to push you if it does get done, right? If you can do it on your own, you can do it on your own.
Yeah.
Like, you won't need to reach out to them necessarily, but if it's like you said, if it's there, it's there, right?
Yeah.
Might as well use that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's free. So,
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, that's really cool.
Talk us through the because I remember when you were working at Back in Motion. How do you think going through that journey has changed you?
I think I look back at Back in Motion very differently to when I was actually working in Back in Motion. Like I said, a lot of my clientele population was chronic pain, which meant very elderly patients. And I always had an interest in sports and athletes. So for me, it felt very, very slow paced when I was going through it. I also felt I was quite limited in the things that I could do for clients. But as I said, I think going through it, the key information that I took out of it regarding physical and mental health is honestly the sort of foundation that's built Pump and Click at the moment. So without that experience, I don't think I'd have Pump and Click.
Is that something you reckon you'd... Because I'm sure like a lot of people follow you on Instagram as maybe upcoming physios or people who are studying physio. You reckon that's advice you'd give them?
Yeah,
before
absolutely.
you start your own thing?
Absolutely. I think there were a few... I opened up a question poll on Instagram the other day, and there were a few physio students who sort of asked some questions about, I'm interested in sport, I want to own my business one day, what would you recommend? And my recommendation maybe when I first started would have been very different, but after everything I've experienced, I said, look, just be a generalist for a bit, do everything, get your hands involved in every kind of situation, and not just injury wise. I think the main thing is like, deal with as many different personalities as you can, because no matter what stream you're in, a physio or any line of work, you'll pick up the skills soon enough to be able to get results for your clients. So if you can expose yourself to different personalities, that's pretty much your high ticket out of any situation.
Learning to work with people.
Yeah.
Because I think, like even for me, right, like I've worked multiple different jobs, different roles, and I think each of them connect, right, in their own way. Like you get skills out of, for example, a sales role that you can take into a different role, even if it's almost nothing to do with each other, right?
Yeah.
It's almost similar to that.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
Really
I think at the end of the day, you realize you're in a position to solve a problem of somebody else. It doesn't matter what the problem is. So you just got to learn to speak the different languages to help educate them and guide them through whatever problem they're going through to reach their solution.
I think that's something you're really good at. And part of the reason I brought you on is as well, it's like I'm almost used to being the most chill person in the room, but sometimes when I'm with Minnie, he just like does not, like, I feel like he's so chill and he doesn't, any issue you sort of pose to him, he's like, that makes it seem like it's a silly thing to say to him, right? Do you feel like you're like that with him? I don't know, like when I feel like I have an issue and I tell Minnie about it, he's like, you answer it so calmly that I'm like, why did I care about that?
I didn't realize that was the impact.
That was the impact. I don't know, I thought that was interesting. But I think there's, obviously a lot you're doing, and, I think for people who actually haven't, already gone to his Instagram, give him a follow, because I think there's a lot of, especially for people who want to, go into that sort of gym, physio mentality kind of area, right? I think it's something he's really useful in. And a lot of it actually comes through his Instagram. Like a lot of my friends who follow him haven't even talked to him, but actually get a lot out of just watching those videos subconsciously, right?
I think another part of it's just like what he was saying before. it gives you a sense of belief
Mm.
to see people just achieving the things that they set their mind to, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't need to see it in person. It's like if you see someone because you're following me on Instagram, that
Absolutely, yeah. And that's probably one of the biggest ways my business does get marketed. People just view it on Instagram, and they'll say, "Yeah, I saw your story or your post about my friend who went to you, or this guy that I know, or this girl," and that's how it sort of like explodes from there.
Yeah, because I think that like the stuff that's on there is so useful, and it's fun as well. Like you've got the Friday Fraud Watch.
That's
who are you
right.
exposing next? What are you exposing?
To be honest, I think of it on the day. It's just kind of like an end of week, have a bit of fun, have a bit of a rant about something that peeves me. So I just let it all out on that post.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So your details will be there. So all good. But how about you? What do you want to just talk about today?
I reckon. I mean, for a bit of context, I'm a teacher and I educate, so I have something in common with Minnie in terms of watching people achieve goals, right? So one of the things I'd be curious to hear from your perspective is, obviously we know the impact your training has on your clients, but what is the impact that your clients have on you?
I think it's sort of like what I mentioned before, where I actually think, if anything, my clients are the ones that inspire me now, whether it be lifting or their dedication, just how hard working they are in wanting to achieve their own goals. I have this one client recently that he's gone off to college for sport, and he broke one of the records in our gym and things like that. And he's a young kid, he's like 18 years old. But I've never seen anyone have a strong singular focus to his goal than him in any aspect of life. Like, he can be looking at something and you know that all he's thinking about is becoming a professional athlete in his sport. And I trained him for about 3 months, or about 3 or 4 months, and nothing wavered. Like, every hour of his day was dedicated to him becoming that pro athlete. And he got the college scholarship and things like that. And I'll just like observe him sometimes, like in between sets. Like, I might compare him a little bit to his friends and whatnot that come through. And generally people are like having fun or listening to music or maybe even flicking through their phone or whatever it might be. And he'll just sort of sit there between sets and he'll just sort of gaze into the distance. And you just knew that all he was thinking about was baseball. And I was like, it was every session. It was incredible.
Future David Goggins.
And like, he's 18 and he like gets up at 6 a.m. every day. First thing he does is drink a liter of water, cooks his own breakfast, cooks his meals for the day, goes to work, works about 8 hours a day just so he has enough cash saved up for when he goes to the US, because visa students there aren't allowed to work. So he was just working as much as he could to fund his life over there. Trained with me twice a week, trained his sport about 4 or 5 times a week, and sleep on time and everything. And I was just like, this is incredible. It's like an 18-year-old kid who knows exactly what he wants and isn't going to give up until he gets it. And just from that, I was like, well, pump and click is my thing that I want to grow really big. And he actually just like inspired me to be like, work a little bit harder. Like, you got your free time and things like that. That's cool. But utilize it to open up the online coaching that you wanted to do, or make a few more videos for your next video series. Reach out to a few extra clients or something like that. And I don't know if he knows that he's had that impact on me, and he's just one example. I feel I get that from every single one of my clients.
That's awesome. I think I sort of take 2 things, and I think the first thing there, and I'll pose it as a bit of a question because I think it's interesting for people watching, right? Like, how important is routine? How important is sleeping on time, eating the right things? Because I think especially where the gray area a little bit is with eating, because it's so important, right? Like, I know a lot of the conversation we have is around the importance around keeping on top of your food. How important is that?
I think again, I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that, so that's not my field. And there are heaps of great experts out there who are much more informed than me. But one thing that we sort of do with our clients here sometimes is, again, we reverse engineer it. So every client and athlete goes through a period where they start to go for max deadlifts. And for anyone who's ever gone for a max lift, you need everything in line to be able to achieve it. So not only do you have to have hit your gym sessions, hit your volume, hit your capacity work, etc., you have to hit your sleep. You have to drink water. You have to have your food. And I think what happens is when clients are reaching their point of maximum and they start to fail at their max lifts because it's getting so heavy, that's when they start reversing it and taking care of everything else and setting up a routine for that. And I feel like it almost happens quite naturally, because I think one thing I've found working with heaps of different clients is you can tell them they need to gym 2 to 3 days a week, they need to sleep at this time, drink this much water, eat this much food, work 8 hours a day, look after their family. No one can do everything at once. It's almost impossible to be able to do everything at once. So the way I like to sort of teach people or get people to train it, and this is just coming from my own personal experience, is just do one thing really well. And then once you want to take that to the next level, like say my deadlifts, for example, my gymming, I'm like, all right, I want to take that to the next level. I probably need to start eating a little bit healthier or eating a little bit more, whatever that looks like to you. And I'll do that. And that will push me another maybe 5-10%. And I'm like, look, if I want to go any further, I probably need to start sleeping a little bit better, have more of a routine. Okay, let me get at least 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep, whatever it might be for each person. And then that sort of seeps into different areas of your life. And I think that will then set a routine for you.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's, really interesting, because it's almost like you're saying, take it step by step. It's not, you're not, I think it's a big thing for me as well. Like, there's no rush to do things, right? Like, if you take it one step at a time, you'll eventually get on top of it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, I'm lucky enough to deal with clients who have their sport as their career and therefore their number one priority. So it is quite easy to teach them. I can be like, look, you need to start eating better. And generally most of them will start eating better. Or you need to start sleeping better. They start doing it. But yeah, I think for people who maybe aren't having the same aspirations of reaching professional sport and things like that, again, it all ties back to your why and why you're doing anything in life, basically. And if you have some sort of correlation to that, I think you'll be able to stick to a slightly better routine.
And I think something I find interesting between you and sort of you guys, you guys said that you're both, sort of teachers and trainers, right? The fundamental layout of your business, or the way you guys work, is the why, right? Like, I think that's something that I find really interesting, and you have a strong focus on it, and you have a strong focus. Like, do you think that's basically because it's the best way to go about it, or is it just your approach to it?
I think it's like, we've spoken about it so much before, but it almost becomes your why. It's like helping other people discover theirs, and seeing the impact it has on their life becomes the why. It's like in your career, why else would you do it, right? It's like what you've been speaking about now. You've been inspired by all these people going and chasing their dreams.
Yeah.
That's probably the greatest motivator and inspiration for you in doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Same for me.
Yeah. I think it all started, it's one of those weird things where, for me, it just started by reading the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Before that, I didn't know what a why was. I was just going about every day like any other person. I think I've also come to realize, and Shannon's probably come to this stage as well, I'm sure. He's obviously a few years ahead with owning his own business. But when we do talk about why, when we talk about routine and things like that, we're not perfect either. I don't think our why or routines are any better or stronger than anybody else. So it doesn't necessarily mean that is the key to success. I think we just know that it does help. But there's also no rush in finding your why, I think. I have a strong belief that life will just figure itself out for you. You just have to experience it and enjoy it. You don't need to rush to find your purpose. You don't need to rush to find your why, your dream job, dream girl, guy, whatever it might be. I think if you just enjoy every day, things sort of just will happen without you even realizing.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I think that's... Sorry?
No, I resonate with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think sort of similar to... I think that's something we all sort of have in common, right? I think it's just so carefree when we hang out with each other, which is one of the most fun parts. And I think another thing I sort of want to touch on, right, was, there are obviously a lot of people out there sort of trying to find that why and everything like that. But what I took away from before, I said there were two things in that story with, your high performing, trainees and everything like that. where was that point you sort of realized that, this is the route you want to take, that you want to become, this awesome physio, have, your own clinic, your own gym? What was that point? Did you, or do you think it just sort of came naturally?
Yeah, I think it sort of just came a bit more natural. I think I just realized I wanted to do physio with this big domino effect kind of mentality that I was telling you about, where I'm like, every patient that I've ever treated always needs to do strength work. I'm like, why don't I just get them to do strength work before and see what happens? So it almost started as like a preventative thing.
Yeah.
And then I personally enjoyed like lifting like heavyish weights and whatnot. So I was like, all right, well, I've taught them how to lift the weights and get them stronger. Why not push them to see how far they can go? And then I think the interesting thing with my business is like, strength is something that takes years and years to build. And so even with my very first clients who have come to see me like 2.5 years ago, we're almost finding this new path as well, because it's sort of like uncharted territories for everyone. Because I started my business 2.5 years ago, my first ever clients with this model of treatment or training has only been 2.5 years. So every year we're finding new things with every client, new obstacles and new ways to motivate. So yeah, it's kind of just like unraveled on its own. It was never like, this is exactly how I want my business to be. It just sort of happened as we kind of kept pushing the needle.
And I think it's interesting that you point out sort of, you have all these different, not problems, but different things you see pop up with different clients and everything like that. Well, what's your experience with that with your students? How do you sort of overcome that? Is it sort of,
No, I fully agree. I think you can only know. I used to probably be arrogant enough to think that I had figured it all out, but I think there's no way of figuring it out until you go through it, right? And even to this day, there's always like some sort of new challenge that someone's working through. I'm like, oh, I've actually never experienced that, but that's fine. Let's go through it, right? And I think the one thing you do gain is a sense of belief that whatever comes, you'll be able to meet.
Yeah.
And then the more you go through it, the more you develop this sense of belief that whatever the challenge is, you don't need to think about what it is because you can never predict it, but you can develop a sense of confidence that you'll be able to meet it and work through it and help anyone who gets there to work through it for themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what develops.
Yeah. I think like it's almost like a problem solving ability.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
Yeah. 100%. And you said, earlier on, when you were sort of starting that with Shanaka was someone who helped you out a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about that sort of friendship and everything.
Yeah. I think that's probably when we became close. Around 2017, 2018 maybe. So yeah, it's a couple of years after that where I'd always have a chat to him and I was like, not exactly happy with where I am with work. And we'd sort of have chats about opening up my own business and things like that. And in 2019, finally pulled a pin and opened up my business. But I had no business idea about anything. All I knew was physiotherapy. Didn't know how to run a business, didn't know how to set up a model or charge clients or whatever it might be, customer service. I think that's, like, Shanna's gave me a lot of good resources, a lot of good advice in that time that really did give me a bit of confidence that there's a bit of a system in place. I think that's what I lacked a lot of. I think more so than that, it was whenever I'd have down periods and I'd share that with Shanna's would be like, yeah, I had the exact same periods. And I was just like, that was always sort of comforting to know as well, that having a friend who is quite successful in his own business, knowing that they've had the ups and downs that you're sort of going through. And again, maybe related to what we were saying before, it was just me seeing a friend who was succeeding in business. I was like, oh, cool, I can succeed in business, as well. So that was probably like the biggest reflective thing that he had on me.
It's been cool to just sit by the side and watch as well. From the days you stole off me in the physics exam, stole my grades.
Yes.
It's been awesome.
Yeah. And, tell us a little bit about, the vision you have for Pump and Pick and what do you want it to sort of be? Like, at the moment, I think it's very successful in, like, at least right now, I can probably tell from the external that, you're really happy with it. You've got a bunch of clients. You've got your own place now, which is sick. So, what do you want to do moving forward? What do you see for it? And, what do you want to change?
I think I think I've sort of like, I'll have certain things in place that I want to achieve. Like obviously I want more clients. I want to start hiring a few coaches. I'm going to hire one straight out of lockdown for this period. And then start having slightly bigger reach, reaching out to more physios to kind of guide them through the process that I go through, physio students and stuff as well. Hopefully if I can develop like a workshop like that, which we're working on right now, we can start taking that internationally and things like that. But coming back to it, I think 3 years ago, even though I wrote down all my goals, all my objectives and things like that, it probably wasn't what I expected it to be now. So I'm kind of open to the idea that I want a wider reach, but right now I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, of course. I think that it sort of does change throughout, while you're going through it. It's not, I think, if you get yourself stuck in the thought of wanting to do the same thing the whole time, some people will do it, right? Like we talked about, some people will do it, but it does need to adapt while you're going ahead. And sometimes it'll grow, sometimes it'll get smaller. Yeah,
and I think, like I said, I'm sort of going through this process with a bunch of clientele who started with me 2 years ago. And so we're just figuring out the journey a little bit as well. And that's almost a microcosm of my business where I'm sort of just figuring it out as I go as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things I actually really enjoy about your specific business, and I think similar to you as well with obviously your UCAT tutoring, it's almost like a friendship, right, with your clients. It's not that you're necessarily like a teacher or something like that. It's like you're just there, just chilling with them, having a good
100%.
time.
I think I've told Shanna's countless times that how lucky I feel that I'm literally just working with a bunch of mates throughout the entire day. I think that's something that I've done very differently to when I was working in a clinic and things like that as well, where it was always about keeping a very, very professional relation with your clients and making sure, to me, it almost felt like we cut down on a little bit of empathy because we weren't really trying to connect with the clients. It was a little bit more about, just see them, get them through the door, on to the next one. But that's one big thing that I wanted to change, where I wanted to develop more relationships with each of them, because I feel like unless you do that, they're not going to be able to, I guess, fully buy into what you do, and you can't extract the best out of them either. So I found the best approach is just be yourself, and you'll just attract people like yourself as well. And just become mates with all of them.
I believe in that probably so much, to the point where I reckon if a business isn't developing human-to-human connections with their clients and customers, it's just a matter of time before it fails.
And I also feel like you can define failure in many ways. I just feel like you won't be able to enjoy it as much if you're not having those deep relations with your clients and treating them like your friends, because how else do you sort of get to enjoy their successes when you've seen them go through their lows and things like that? And I think that's the beauty of having like face-to-face interactions and whatnot.
It's like the higher fulfillment, right? It's like there's one tier of fulfillment where you've reached your goal in what you wanted from this business, but the higher fulfillment is realizing your customers reached their goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you got to go through that with them.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing each of them achieve certain goals with the trials and tribulations they have, I think that's the best part of it. And that's what gives me the most joy. And you can't really have that if you haven't connected with the client.
100%. I think, and it comes back to being there for them when they're at their lows pushes them to be when you're there at the highest, right? I think that relationship building is so cool to see in both of you guys, because I personally believe I'm not, people that don't know me, I'm not like a teacher. I'm more of a student for most stuff, right? But I think even for me, from the other end, when I connect most with someone, that's when I want to do the best. Like not only for myself, I guess from you guys, what it sounds like you guys are saying is it's mainly the person that's doing it, right? But for me, from the other end, it's like it's so important for us that you're there for us to help us and push us through specific things. So it's sort of like a give take kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's sort of both sides working together, which is really interesting.
I think the feedback I've kind of gotten is like when you have someone who believes in you like 100% and there's never a moment of doubt in their mind, all you want to do is prove them right.
Exactly.
So
same with when you're on. That's awesome.
I think the other interesting thing is like one thing I've definitely learned recently is you'll see all these different people, and it's a very unique position where you're coaching them one-on-one. So you're there for an hour, sometimes 2-3 days a week. And your interactions initially might be very cordial, very professional, very just polite and whatnot. And then as you start to get to know each other, you open up a little bit more, and that's when the friendship develops. And this is kind of off topic from training and things like that, but I've had such a wide variety of clientele with different perspectives, different views on life, different opinions and things like that, whether it's different amongst themselves or different to me. It's made me realize that you can't really have judgment on people with their opinions or with their thoughts or whatever it is, because everyone has had a certain upbringing that's formed that opinion or formed that thought. And you sort of realize that if you had had the same upbringing, you would also have the exact same thoughts. And it's just been interesting. I mean, like this last 2 years has been a very interesting period for everybody with COVID and all the politics and everything going on. And naturally people will talk about it. They'll share their opinions on it. And it's just quite interesting to hear the wide variety of opinions you do hear from people who you consider very close as your mates. And it's just made me probably realize more and more that I think I appreciate people who do have very differing opinions to me, or who might be able to think different, because it's the only way that I actually challenge myself to think differently. Sometimes you don't realize how stuck you are in your own way of thinking. And I think it's natural. Everyone thinks their way of thinking is correct because it's served us to this point. So when you hear all these different topics, different opinions, it's pretty cool because you're just like, how did you come to that opinion or thought? And the very fact that that exists, you're just like, oh shit, maybe I don't know everything that I thought I knew. Or maybe there is more validity to this opinion than that opinion, or this thought and that thought. So that's another really cool thing that I've realized as a byproduct of becoming friends and becoming close with these sort of clients.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because I feel like everyone has, their different opinions. And like you said, usually if you're not, if you're surrounded by an environment where you don't actually get exposed to other ideas, other, mindsets and everything like that, you're sort of stuck in your way, right? And I think for a long time I was as well, until sort of started talking to it about other people, to different people, and they'll be like, oh no, this is what I think. Yeah. And you sort of have that, back and forth discussion, and you realize, oh, fair enough, that what they're saying is right as well. From their perspective. I think that's really interesting.
I think it's why it's important that we live in a world where people can share their views and express what they think is true. Because how else can we work towards what is true? Yeah. Right? Otherwise everyone will live in their own bubbles, not willing to share what they believe. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to say something, but I've forgotten.
I think the caveat to that though is I think it requires deep humbleness.
I think it's been a bit of a journey. I can definitely admit and say, when I'd first have someone opposing my thought or giving me another opinion, naturally you kind of tie emotion and an identity to that opinion and thought. And that's, I think, where you realize heated discussions or arguments may occur. But having seen more and more of these differing opinions, it kind of made it was almost like one day you just sort of realize who's to say your opinion is the right one, or your thought pattern, the way you think through things is correct. And then you just learn to sort of accept that there are so many other ways that things can be done. And it's pretty cool to see people using their own methods to achieve their sense of success.
Yeah. I feel like everyone goes through their own little journey of, issues, problems, and, it's sort of off each other that we can sort of experience the other person's, right? As in, throughout our own life, we're not going to ever experience everything, but talking to someone else, even that in itself is an experience there as well, right?
Absolutely.
You can sort of feel what they're going through, tell what they're going through, and sort of maybe help them out, maybe learn something for yourself. Really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so what you were saying, where when you see a client of yours go through their journey, them conquering that for themselves has helped you do it for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like this osmosis effect where when you see people going through their things, it helps you figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, even something as simple as reaching personal bests in any form of lift, like a deadlift or something like that. I'm someone who I like to have fun and then really like hype myself up. Now, I always thought that that's how it should be done until you see someone who's completely calm, almost docile before a lift, and then they don't need any music or anything like that, and they lift it up, and you're like, shit, you know, there is another way to do it. So it's like pretty cool to sort of identify those different methods, and that there are so many different people out there with different ways of living. And I think if you just tie your identity and emotion to those opinions and thoughts, you kind of close yourself off from seeing the wide variety of people.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that you're saying don't believe in your own way, and it's just be open to like other perspectives.
Yeah.
Just be open-minded.
Yeah, exactly. And if someone's got a certain way that works for them, I think the biggest thing is like you don't need to impose or impart anything onto them. Just let them go through. And I think that's probably one thing I've realized more and more. Perhaps when I first started, I was a bit more hands-on. Like, this is how you should approach it. This is how you should think about it, et cetera, et cetera. But then I realized I'm like, they'll find their own way to figure it out. And that shouldn't be my responsibility to try to coach them into a way of thinking or into a way of mindset. This is as much a learning curve for them to figure themselves out.
Yeah.
Therefore, I should, if anything, detach even more from it.
It almost sounds like, you know, from the way you sort of speak of it, you don't necessarily see this as like a business or like a necessarily part in someone's life, right? Like we sort of look at work, life, gym, like free time, you know, we sort of section it in like times, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like, you know, this is part of a one flow of.
Yeah, exactly. I just find, again, this may be my biases from being in the gym and working in this for such a long time. But I think training yourself physically really teaches you a lot about yourself internally, particularly when you're going for like a very, very big lift or your personal best at something, because I think that's when you're most raw with your emotions. And once you can tap into that or learn things from it, and I see it a lot with my own clients. You know, I'll see someone who might be a little bit too perfectionist with the way they're going about something, and sometimes it's their undoing. And I'll just bring up with them like, do you realize you do all these little things so specifically before a lift? Perhaps you just need to maybe relax a little bit or see how you go with it. So it allows me to sort of see that side of people as well, and even open up their eyes that I've only been doing one thing a certain way. So yeah, I definitely do think it's kind of like a vehicle for everything else in life.
100%. I feel like it's almost like similar to you and your students, right? It's like it's similar to that, like where you sort of train them in, like you said in the first episode, you train them in life, right? Like you train them for not specifically the UCAT. You treat them.
It's like the age-old quote: "How you do one thing is how you do everything. If you know what the one thing you're doing is, right?" And I think when you sort of realize that, it's like the way you do anything will always translate into the way you do everything. And it's like if you're someone who is a perfectionist in one thing, you're going to try to be a perfectionist in everything. And that will be your greatest strength, but it will also be your greatest undoing if you're not aware of it. So I think the better you can know yourself and the patterns of your own behavior, you can translate that and use it in its most effective way in whatever it is that you're going to be doing. So I think it's the best thing you can teach anyone.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like gym, education, work. These are all just channels where you get to know yourself deeper and deeper. And then you can translate it into all the different quadrants or segments of your life.
Yeah. And I feel like each aspect almost has different layers as well. Like I was someone who initially I never believed that, because I'm like, nah, I'm very good at sport, and the way I do sport is very different to the way I do education. So that doesn't apply to me. But then after years of experience and things like that, I realized the way I do sport to achieve success when I want to be successful is actually the way I treat education when I want to be successful. Same way as when sport gets extremely tough, the way I respond to it is the same way I respond to education when it gets very, very tough. So it's not necessarily like, I guess, like at a surface level. I think it's a bit deeper. Like the journey that each of those aspects of your life takes you through is what's going to surface in all of them. Yeah,
that's a good way. Because the biggest thing I notice is when you really put someone under the pump, what comes out in that moment, that's going to...
exactly. That's what's going to resonate throughout other journeys and aspects of life.
Yeah. I think the reason I sort of brought that up specifically is because I sort of see that as, people, even me, right? Like there are times where I sort of separate my life into sort of segments, look at this one way, look at that the other way. But, when you realize it's all sort of connecting and, all like me, if I'm doing well in gym, it usually means I'm doing well in work or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Seeing it all as, sort of one and treating it as that, naturally will just flow through.
Yeah. I think it just allows you to lead your life the way you want to lead it. So forget about how you are in one thing and how you are in the other thing. It's like, how do you want to be just generally? Do you want to be someone who's successful? Do you want to be someone who's hardworking? Do you want to be someone who's chilled out? Whatever it is you choose to be, that's what you can then impart onto different aspects. And then it's just a lot easier because everything then just resonates with who you are as a person.
You don't have to be something else for something.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's the first moment. I feel like at least that's the first moment where you actually get a choice. Yeah. Because like once you realize what your pattern is, then you can be like, okay, that's the moment where I fall into that pattern of being a perfectionist in that particular environment where my back's up against the wall. Is that the response I want to take? Yeah. Whenever my back's up against the wall. Yeah. And that's the point you get to make that decision. Yeah.
100%. Anything you wanted to talk to us about in general? Any questions?
Maybe what's inspired you to start the Chillcast?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's something I probably should have touched on more in the first episode because it turned out I didn't even introduce myself. So let's do that. This is
Kavien Jayakody, by the way.
Kavien Jayakody. It's a great question. I think I've got into a stage where I've actually got like a shit ton of like inspirational people around me where, I don't need to reach out to, influencers or any big people. I've got such a nice network that I sort of want to display their talents, display their skills, right? I don't need to go far to do that. And it's something I think not only that I'm good at, but a skill that I want to build for myself. And, it comes back to that why as well, right? Like for me, I really enjoy speaking to people and connecting. Yeah. Even making like a better connection, right? Like for me, talking to you guys right now, it's such a great opportunity for me to have to be able to talk to my friends like this, right? Yeah. Because a lot of the time I don't usually get to sit down with my friends and have a serious chat. Yeah. So I think it comes down to that, and I think, for example, I think there will be so many people who benefit from seeing this video like you. And the first one, I know a lot of people reached out to me that they're like, holy shit, like I went to sleep knowing that there was so much to be grateful for, right? So, like for me, it's not a dream of, being someone with like 1 million followers. If I can touch, the hearts of like the people that do watch around sort of in my group, in my environment, I think that will be something that I'm really excited for. If there's just the people close to me can get some value out of it. Besides that, it's just fun. It's chill as, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a good time. Yeah,
I think that's a good way to sort of go about it. I think it's like you said, like you like and enjoy connecting with people and whatnot. And you're right, we never probably talk to friends in this way. Like we never really ask what their journey's been to get to their role. Like I know I haven't had that, maybe apart from Shanna's and Louis, I probably haven't had that conversation with my other friends. And if that's something that you like, then I think it's a great way to go about it. And I think so long as you just do that aspect and keep that as your daily goal, this will become like whatever you want it to become.
Yeah, exactly. And I think from the moment we sat down for the first one, I was like, fuck, this is so fun. Like I was just like, I had so much adrenaline. Even now, like I'm just like really hyped, you know what I mean? Like I know like it's going to do well. And not even that, more so like I felt like I was finally doing something that was good for me. You know what I mean? Like I don't usually, I'm someone, I wouldn't say selfless, right? But I'm someone who usually doesn't do too much stuff for myself, where I'm usually like, I can, go somewhere, do stuff for other people. But I felt like finally I created a space and environment where I can do something for myself, talk to people. And then, even though I'm inviting you and saying it's going to have an impact on a lot of people, it's having that much of an impact on me, which sort of links to what you guys were saying with the clients, right? I think that's why I sort of started this, and I think it's going to go for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome, man.
Nice.
I think it's like one of the cool things I picked up on there is like what you were saying. How rare is it to have like authentic conversations? That's not just like what you did today, like whatever nonsense
Yeah.
argument you have with your parents or something like that. It's actually like proper conversations, getting to know each other at a depth that you just don't really have those conversations anymore.
Yeah.
And for some reason, you've got to like set all of this up to do that. But that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And it's like that might be the greatest inspiration you actually have on people beyond the guests you bring on for whatever talents they have. It's like realizing, oh, we can talk like this and have these types of conversations even amongst ourselves.
Exactly.
So that could be awesome.
I 100% agree, and I think that's sort of what inspired me. Right, like as a family, we have all these really deep, weird conversations at like 2:00 in the night, right? So you know those moments. So I've had that with friends, probably with you at times as well, right? Where you know I'm like, holy shit, like this is interesting. We should video it. So that's what I'm doing right now. So just videoing the conversation, and I think as this goes, like I think we'll get a little bit deeper and deeper, but at the moment, I'm sort of trying to keep it a little bit more chill, a bit more casual, just to start off with. And then I think it'll definitely eventually get a bit deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
So I think I had some good topics too.
Yeah, good topics. Still not done, so. Did you have any other sort of questions that you were looking to ask?
Maybe just one more that I had at the back of my mind. I think it's like, and it might not be the right question, so tell me, but how would you go about getting the average person who doesn't have health as the highest priority in their life? How would you encourage them to think about exercise and health in a way that you think is like fits in nicely, where something else might be where their priority is?
So about 2 years ago, I was running a few weight loss programs, and by their own admission, it attracted a few clientele who had admitted that they've let their health go as a priority, they haven't been really looking out for it, et cetera, et cetera. To summarize how we sort of got them to prioritize it, it was linking it to things that were important for them. So whether it was them having kids or wanting to have kids in the future, we were able to tie how health would be important to be able to be there for their kids, to be the best example for them. And it was sort of like, some of them did come with like health risks and things like that as well, which is often quite an easy motivator for people when you can kind of show them the stark reality of where their health's going to take them. But I think what I found most that like, I guess, inspired people to look after their health was either a relationship that they had with their children or a relationship that they had with their parents. And for all of the clients that I had, where that was probably not a priority, that seemed to surface with every single one of them. Whether it was, again, them wanting to be a better example, or a tethered relationship they might have had with a parent or something like that, that I guess took away from their confidence or took away from how they treat themselves and things like that. And there's probably a science behind that. I'm sure there are psychologists or counselors who could explain something like that better. But that was something that I just found was a commonality with every single client that I had.
Might be putting you on the spot here, but any interesting particular stories that you remember of, you know, and sort of inspirational?
Of inspirational?
Or not like just anything interesting really, back from those days.
Yeah, I think, I feel like everyone has been quite inspirational on their own, but I can think back to one of my clients who, she's actually been with me since my first ever job, when I was working at a clinic, and she had gone through like a terrible car accident, was sort of unable to move for a very long time. She put a lot of weight on, and generally she kind of felt like every aspect of her life she was sort of losing control. And she re-found me when I started my business, and she got in touch with me, told me what her goals were and things like that. I think one of the biggest driving factors for her was, one, she felt like she was losing control of her life, but two, that was because she had no control over her life, she was losing the connections that were important to her. And the biggest one was her son. And so when she kind of realized that and tied it back to that, she just used that as a daily motivator to be better. And then I think she dropped close to like 50 kilos or 60 kilograms,
Jeez.
to the point where she actually competed in an overage bodybuilding competition.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty
That's
crazy
huge, man.
story.
That is
yeah.
insane. Yeah.
But again, I don't know what the science behind it is, but I've found that it was either children or parents that seem to inspire most people who, like you said, maybe didn't have health as their first priority or have sport as a career that they want to go towards. But even with
to what matters most.
Yeah, but even with that, I have asked a few of my athletes and stuff, and like those that do want a professional career in sports, it's actually turned out to be the same as well. They want to do it for the parents who were always there for them, who took them to soccer practice, took them to their games, if it was, rain, hail, or shine, whatever it might be. All of them have been able to tie it back to that. And I think I've found those that have been able to tie to something as strong as that, if that's their why, they've probably been the closest to being able to achieve the goals that they want to achieve.
Yeah. That's actually something I see, like when there's like really rich Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor's, and you see in those stories, like the first people that actually treat are their parents, right? Like
Yeah.
And I think there's a Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight coming up, and the relationship between Tyron Woodley, I don't know if you guys follow him much, but and his mum, it's I can sort of see that in a lot of like the athletes, and I feel like especially when you're trying to be like a professional athlete, it's not like a traditional path. Like you need either
There's a lot of sacrifice.
There's a lot of sacrifice that most people won't see.
Yeah, and I think that they realize that sort of sacrifice has come more from their parents than it has for them. So I think they all feel this sense of repaying their parents in a way. That's just what I've sort of seen as a common trend.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. I probably see the same thing in all of my students as well. Yeah.
Thank you guys all so much for listening. So basically this is Minnie, as you guys have pretty much gone through the whole thing, you know that by now. All of his links in the will be in the description. So to his Instagram, make sure you follow it. Really, really interesting stuff. I'm sure there's a lot more to come. Shanaka, again, same stuff. He'll be in the description. Make sure you like the video, subscribe. All my stuff will also be in the description. A lot in the description. And for the one person who disliked the video, at least next time, let me know why. Okay? Put it in the comments.